Damien, maybe you can start by elaborating a little bit more, and because it's always
Mm,
nuanced, right? We always say statements
yes.
and on LinkedIn, and then when we discuss, we find we agree on a lot more. So this might be a very short podcast, or it could be a long one. So go ahead and state it the way. Like, what were you thinking when you stated that?
Yeah, so just to add some context, I think if you look at most websites today in the B2B space, right, on the vendors, anybody selling services, you will not find pricing. And it is a pretty common tactic from a marketing perspective to have a pricing page that lists a couple of options, a couple of nuances, but not actually give you the price. And I think this is a huge miss that we've seen in the past as well as today, where data is just available to buyers everywhere, right? I can jump in a Slack community, I can go call a friend, I can reach out to analysts like Gartner or Forrester. I will find your pricing information, but why are you going to make it that much harder for me to find it if I have to set a budget, right? If I have to plan ahead for the future? The price should be on the website, but there are caveats to that, as you said.
Okay, and John, you disagree with that?
So I disagree with that mostly. So my answer to Damien, and I stated this on LinkedIn, is it's the classic sales engineering answer of it depends. So what I did disagree was that for most companies, it is not a marketing tactic. It's actually a business necessity, even for a small company like mine, which I'll explain at some point, I think, in the next 45 minutes. So, yes, there are some nuances there. I think it's also a little bit more black and white than was being painted on LinkedIn.
Do you want to explain it now, or about your business
Uh,
specifically, or just
I'm going to use that as an example later. I mean, I think if you
okay?
take it to its absurdity, to the logical conclusion, you can't just go on a website of a company, say a big company like an SAP or an Oracle, and say, hey, how much is one of those SAP things? Or I want to buy two Oracles. How much is that? Right? The answer is it depends. So sometimes it is a business necessity or requirement that you need to gather information from customers before you can give them even a outline benchmark price. So I think
Okay.
that's my position.
So what I like
Yeah.
to do, which is a little bit different, I think, I don't know. Maybe I'm being thinking too highly of myself. Uh, I would like to see where you guys agree. So, John, you said it depends. Where should the pricing? What's an example of where pricing should be available online?
So, for example, if you are a relatively small company or a single product company, or everything that you do is an X as a service and there's not too many variables, then certainly some indication, some range of pricing should be made available. The question comes into play, what are those variables, and how complicated is your pricing? Do you have international pricing? Is there government pricing? Are there discounts baked in for certain clients? So pricing models, as anybody in product marketing will tell you, rapidly get out of hand, to the point where even 20 years ago, there were software products sold that would calculate pricing on the fly for you. And they never worked because people's pricing models were too complex even back then.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that is one area where we do agree. So if you're a Microsoft, you're an SAP, a Dell, right? Huge organizations, multiple portfolios, multiple, vertical specific products. It probably is impossible to put a price on the website. But I do agree with John that if you are a point solution, or even if you have a couple of solutions that everybody loves to say, we roll into one, you buy the platform these days, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just different pieces of it. It's not unreasonable to have a starting point there from a pricing perspective. And what I mean by that is you don't put just the price on the website, right? You don't just say, hey, you buy my platform, it's $100,000 a year. It's never that black and white. But being able to put something as a starting point to give people a budget, to give them some indication of, you're in the realm of possibility, or there's no way you can afford us, is what I think buyers today really need in order to have those conversations. And I'll give a concrete example of this, right? How many times have we gone into a sales meeting where we've done a demo, we've gone through some qualification process, and the customer says, this is pretty interesting. I really like this. Let's move to a POV or a POC. And we're like halfway through, everything's going really well. We've probably spent weeks on this. And then the customer turns around and says, all right, I need to start putting together some quotes, right? And the initial price is, I don't know, I'm making this up, $150,000. And all of a sudden the person pulls back and is like, whoa, that's like, I just can't afford that. It's way out of the realm of possibility. You could argue that's part of the qualification process, but I would counter argue that that's something that should be as clear up front on the website, even before someone engages in a sales conversation, because sales resources are expensive.
Yeah, and I would again agree mostly with Damien, except to the point where if you are halfway through a POV and you have not discussed pricing in any way with your client, that is incredibly poor sales discipline. And if that sales
Yes.
rep and SE combo were working for me, they wouldn't be working for me too much longer if that behavior persisted. I mean, that's just horrible sales discipline. So certainly, if you're progressing anywhere, that's going to require a significant input of time, money, or people into a deal, pricing needs to be discussed. The website is not always the best place to place pricing. Can you put some indicative pricing there? Yes, you can. And I think what I took exception to is the people who were piling on in the comments saying, no, it's the evil marketing people who don't want to provide pricing to make you talk to a business development rep. It's like, no, that's not the way it is. And I don't know, maybe some companies do that. That's not my expression, and I'm certainly prepared to give companies the benefit of the doubt and assume that their pricing is even way more complex than we have at up to speed mastering technical sales.
So
Yeah, I will. Sorry, I was going to say, I will say that at least for cyber, right, where most of my life has been spent, that is actually the model, right? It's take a demo, talk to sales, and the whole intent is to get you in front of an SDR, to talk to an AE, to then go to an SE just for a discovery conversation or just to learn the pricing. And I think that part of the model really is broken.
why is that the model? If we were to look deeper, like why is, if it's better in general to have pricing out up front, why? Let's assume marketing people are ethical people, right? I'm willing to make that assumption. I haven't met unethical market. Oh, I'm sure they're out there, but I don't want to generalize, right? Assuming they're ethical, why is that the model? Or at least do you have an explanation for that or an idea?
It's because that's been the sales and marketing playbook since the dawn of time in cyber, and many companies have been really slow to adapt it, unfortunately. I mean, if you look at all the comments on LinkedIn, especially from this year, everyone is talking about how sales being down, or sales and opportunities being pushed out. The market's really unsure. You're seeing a lot of layoffs because a lot of companies grew too fast. And I think it's because they grew sales staff too fast, right? You've got a lot of BDRs, a lot of AEs, right? And not the business to sustain that. And if you think about it, those individuals, and again, I'm talking cyber specific, are really there to help qualify opportunities, to talk about budgets, to see if there is a fit. Well, buyers today usually know more than the people they're initially talking to, right? So I've seen a lot of companies start to say, well, we got to reduce the amount of sales staff that we've had because we're not having that level of interaction. And maybe one avenue to save, not just from a cost perspective, but even from a time and qualification perspective, is to have a starting point of the price on your website.